You're listening to the Living Her Next Phase podcast, the destination for cultivating the next best version of yourself. I'm your host, Bree Cobb, and I'm here to help you along your journey of rediscovering what makes you feel beautiful, fulfilled, and complete. Please welcome my next guest of the Living Her Next Phase podcast, acclaimed jewelry designer Sophie Blake. Join us as we discuss her journey from corporate life to running her own business, the inspirations behind her designs, the challenges of the fashion industry, motherhood, and the importance of support. Hi, Sophie. How are you?
I'm good, Bree. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for joining me here today. I'm super excited about this interview.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm very excited too. This is my first podcast.
Yay! So I'm glad you chose to have Living Her Next Phase be the first one that you interviewed for. So this was kind of launch your podcasting journey, right? So I'm sure
Yeah,
after this
exactly.
you'll say, "Oh, I've got to do this more."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Great. All right, Sophie. So Sophie Blake, New York. Um, 13 years as a jewelry designer and
Yes.
7 years running your boutique. So I know that you serve as a creative director. Clearly, you're the founder, but you serve as the creative director for your business and you manage the day-to-day operations.
Absolutely.
So what I see is a woman who's growing a business and who's experiencing a lot of success. But I'd like to know, how do you describe yourself on a both professional and a personal note? What else can you share besides what I see? Because I know there's a lot of depth here.
So I would say I'm the founder and creative director of Sophie Blake Designs. And the reason why I would say that I'm both hats is because I have to manage all sides of the business. And I have an executive position. I would describe myself as an executive, but also a designer. And designers are creatives. So flexing both sides of the mind has been one of my biggest challenges, but it's also been the one that's pushed me to understand all sides and all facets of the business. And the way I would describe the brand itself, it is travel inspired wearable art. The way that I originate my collections is that I travel to a destination, I kind of absorb the culture, the experience, and then I come back and in a visual sense through jewelry, I describe that experience. And so for me, one of the biggest joys is to take an idea and it's kind of in the air, and then you kind of conceptualize it and make it real. And it's physical, tangible things. So when I was working in corporate, and this is something that I will talk about in the interview, but I worked in corporate for 9 years. And one of my biggest challenges was that I couldn't connect to the customer and I couldn't physically produce anything because everything was very intangible. It was all like reports and virtual product, which was like PowerPoint slides and Excel sheets. And in this place, in this reality that I've created, it's more physical goods. And it's the reaction I get when women change, like try on a piece and they connect with the jewelry piece. So yeah.
Okay. And then on a personal note, who is Sophie Blake?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm definitely a traveler. I love to travel. I love to experience things. I would say I am, someone that came to the United States when I was 10 years old. So I'm an immigrant kid. I have a kind of a
And where are you from?
Armenia. So I was born in Armenia. I came to the States when I was 10. And I'm, I went through a major shift in my life many times. And I think that resilience and like adaptability is the way I would describe. I'm very, I tend to adapt and to any situation, but most importantly, I think I'm an optimist.
Okay.
Because you have to be, when you have your own business, you have to believe in yourself and you have to be optimistic that things are going to work out in the way that you want them to. And when you have that vision and you're like, I'm creating something and I'm building something. So I would say I'm an optimistic traveler slash jewelry designer, but also like on a personal level, I'm a mother. So flexing both running a business and being a mom is also like part of my identity. But yeah.
Excellent. So, where have you traveled to that inspired you the most?
Ooh, that's a hard question because every place that I go to, there's something unique and different in that location. But I think maybe one of my most, there were two locations actually that I traveled to that I felt very inspired by. One was Thailand. Thailand was one of those places where spirituality was at the front and center of everywhere you went. And it kind of connected you to like to the spirituality that the Thai people practice, which is Buddhism. Sorry, not Buddhism, Hinduism. Yeah, Buddhism. I don't know why I thought Hinduism, that's India. Buddhism. And it's all about meditation and connecting to a higher source, but also like this, the way that people moved through the day, like appreciating life and appreciating the beauty of life. And I think that we kind of lose that in the United States. We're so hustle culture and we're so like, let go, go, go. And what's the next thing? In some ways, Buddhism kind of slows you down and lets you like be in introspective instead of how would I say outerspective? Is that even a word? I don't even know.
No, introspective, yes.
Introspective, but
Opposite?
like the opposite would be like,
It's not extrovert. It's not, it has nothing to do with that. I know what you're saying though. It's like,
but yeah, like it kind of reconnects you to your own soul, into your own spirit. And then what I also thought was interesting is people were really kind and they were very like welcoming and open, even though we were foreigners and we didn't speak the language. Everywhere, every corner you turned to, there was like a temple to, you know, celebrate Buddhism and the spirituality. In homes, they had a Buddha like statue. And of course, like the what is it, the temples, oh my God, they were just beautiful, like
I'm sure.
unbelievable. The colors, the vibrance, the food, the ambiance, like everything about it was just like really cool. So that was really one of my ultimate favorite travel experiences. And I did come up with a collection called Santia. And it was just really Santia. Yeah. Santia is a place in Thailand. It was like a location that we stayed in, and I really felt connected to it. And then the other place that I would say I really enjoyed going to, or two places I should say, was my two Central American trips. I guess they're Central America, Ecuador and Costa Rica.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and that was all about nature and the natural world and just like absorbing the beauty of it and just, yeah.
Have you been to Panama?
You know, I will
That's
be.
where my family's from.
Oh, you're from Panama? No
Yeah,
way.
yes, yes. That's what I was waiting to hear. I'm like, is she gonna say Panama?
Well, you know what's so interesting? So we have a trip planned in just a month out, and it's to Argentina, but our connection is to Panama. Unfortunately, we're not staying in Panama.
Okay.
I'd love to go explore.
Yes.
I know you guys have some of the most amazing coffee in Panama.
Oh,
It's
yes.
supposed to be like it's rivals like the Ethiopian original bean. I think that there's like a special coffee bean that I watched like this documentary on coffee, and it was like talking about how in Panama they have some of the best coffee in the world.
Right.
So,
I couldn't have that conversation with you. I just know go ahead, and I have café con leche, and that's it. I can't tell
yeah,
you.
café con leche. Yeah.
We're actually having our family reunion there.
Oh wow,
Next
that's gonna be
July. We're working on it now. There's like a committee of 9 of us, and we're planning things out. We've got quite a bit of family members here and still over there. And at this point, we're hoping to get about 300. So it's going to be
that's a big group. Oh
yes,
my
yes.
God.
Well, it's going to be exciting, you know. So we'll see. But okay. So now when you travel and your collections are inspired by your travels, and then you create something, do you then archive it after a season? Like what process do you follow? You launch something based off of a recent travel,
Yes.
it performs, and then you just archive it, or do you kind of keep it going until, say, product sells out?
I would say probably a little bit of both. It just depends. There are certain pieces that I've designed and they're just evergreen pieces. And evergreen is like, they just never go out of style. But I also, the way that I design, I make sure that the pieces I design, they are universally good despite whatever trend is happening in the fashion industry or in the jewelry industry. And when I design, I actually kind of try to connect a design element from the previous collection. So like carrying that continuity from one collection to the next. It's sometimes hard to do, but in some cases it's a little bit easier because you kind of have, it's kind of like a muscle. You built this muscle. Sometimes there is creative block, and that's something that I've struggled with. And I've talked to other creatives and they have it too, where you just can't come up with something right away. And I think that that's one of the biggest challenges right now in our industry is that we're expected to basically crank out a collection every season.
Yes.
And that's not how true creatives work. Like creatives need time to like marinate on the idea, to process it, to play a little bit, and then to come out with something that they really love and enjoy. So I feel like I'm getting pushed from a little bit in that pressure of like, oh, I should have a new collection out every season. But then I also want to challenge that concept a little bit because it's like, you know, you don't expect the same thing from an artist who puts out an album.
Right.
It might take 1 or 2 years or even more to come out with beautiful music, but they have that creative time to kind of put their best foot forward. And so I think that's been a challenge. But yeah, for most part, like most of my pieces, if a customer wants a piece that I've archived, I will reintroduce it back into the collection for them. But always pay attention to obviously the analytics and the sell-throughs and all that stuff.
It's the business side of things.
Yeah, it's not easy to like, you know, carry, like I've over the course of my design career, I've come up with so many collections. You can't possibly keep all of them. And then the other thing is, it depends on what materials you're using. Like if you have a specific stone that is a limited edition stone, there's no way you're going to be able to keep that in stock all the time. Once that is used, once you've, you know, created that, you've used up all the materials, you can't really redo them again unless you introduce something entirely new.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that is the challenge, right? But as a founder, you can kind of set the pace. And I understand that the industry is what it is. And as a consumer, yes, we have been trained where every season has got to be something new that comes out. However, I remember, I think her name is Tamara Mellon, right?
Tamara Mellon, yeah.
The shoe designer, right?
Yes.
Who launched with Jimmy Choo. And when she launched her line, she went direct to consumer, and it was just an ongoing release of products. So I felt that she was at the forefront of that change in how the industry was operating, because now so many designers do the same thing. But I remember back at that time, I'm like, good for her. And then she also had certain services that were no longer unique to the industry, like things that people had just foregone, just such as like the cobbler service and just other things that really kept the consumer in mind. So it made me think, even for myself, that with any business, especially if you are the founder, you're steering the ship, right? So and I know there are fashion designers, very few, but do the same thing, right? They're creative, they launch, and then they're gone. Think about Adele, right? Same thing. Yeah. She comes, she gives you something beautiful, and then she retreats again for a couple of years, you know.
And I wonder, like, I mean, obviously it's harder for consumer product or goods versus like music.
Right.
At the same time, it's like, why is there this pressure to have a new collection? And I think it's because we're so taught to be like, well, you have to keep growing, you have to increase your sales, but profitability matters too, and what you put out and quality of what you put out matters too. And so you kind of have to balance all those things out at the same time. And that's really hard to do.
Right.
And the one thing though, that I do hear a lot of founders talk about, and that's something that I think is really important to consider, is quality should never be compromised. Even if, let's say, you're reintroducing a product with a slightly new design, making sure that like, no matter what happens, you don't compromise the quality of your product, because that's that's the core of the brand.
Right. And your consumers will remember that last collection, that last purchase, and you can
Exactly. And they'll
take
compare them. Like they'll be like,
Yes.
well, one seems better done than the other one did,
Right.
so.
Right. Well, last night I purchased a pair of shoes. I'm intentionally not going to mention the designer, but before I did, I said, let me just, because it's not inexpensive at all. So let me take a look at the reviews. And this one blogger talked about this specific shoe. And she mentioned that she had purchased 4 different pairs. And she loves the designer and has never had a problem until recently. And she shared what the problem was, and she showed the item. And she said, I'm not doing this to disparage her. I just need her to fix this, right? Because the shoe that she purchased was over $800. And she said, I need her to fix this because I wore these shoes 2 times. And then she pointed out all the issues. And that's all it takes sometimes, is that one bad experience. I'm sure the designer made it right, because I'm sure she did, but anyway, customer service.
But that's the thing, like you have to remember, consumers also have this, like, the challenge with being a designer and owning your own business too, is that you're not going to be able to keep everyone happy. And there's going to be once or twice a situation where something breaks or something.
Right.
It's just how you support the customer through that process that matters.
Right.
And some customers will never be satisfied and others will give you grace. And that's okay too. Like you have to give yourself that grace too. It's like, you can't control every single piece that comes through the supply chain. And if one is, defective, then just send them a brand new pair. Make sure that you've tested it and it's good. So
exactly. So in that same story, what I liked is that the blogger, she made sure, she said, I own X number of pairs. I've recently purchased 4 or 5 more. This is the situation, but I know she'll fix it. So that was good. So she made sure she, cleaned it up, left room for it to be resolved. But anyway. So what was your first career? So coming out of school, I know you went to McGill.
I did,
which I've heard excellent things about in Canada, McGill University. And so when you came out of school, what did you do before you realized that jewelry was for you?
So
jewelry designing was for you.
I got into a software company as an ops associate. So basically the team implemented software, software launches internally within the company. And the company was a very large company. And I had to oversee the financials behind it, and then run reports and document that all for the executives. And it was a really good experience because it taught me about business in general. But I think when you are in a very big company, you're just like a little cog in the wheel. And you don't see the bigger picture. And that was what I was missing most of all with that business, with the company, was I only got to see a very, very small section of how the business was being run. And it was so internal and so 4 or 5 times removed from the customer. I didn't understand the impact of what I was doing. But it was also not a creative job by any measure, because it required a lot of time in Excel and reporting and PowerPoint slides and sitting in on the laptop. And so the jewelry thing happened organically. I've always been a creative kid, and I always would paint and draw and sketch. And my mom told me since I was 5, I loved drawing, and that was my passion. But when I graduated high school, I decided to go and pursue economics and political science, which is funny because in DC, that would be the perfect, background to get a job in a nonprofit or a government position. But I ended up in software, which had absolutely zero relations to poli-sci. And economics, I guess you could say, but everything was theoretical in what we were taught in university. I wish I had gone in for business administration, because that I would have, excelled in that. But yeah, I mean, I think The jewelry making piece, or like the jewelry designing and understanding like how to take a product, like how to first of all come up with an idea, make it into a product, get it in front of the customer, sell it, and do it over and over again, and then build like an entire brand around it. I mean, that took years, and I'm already in year 13 and we're still growing and trying to figure all those things out. And that's the other thing. I think that to be a business owner, you have to be open to constantly learning new things and coming up with new, like pivoting and changing strategy. Like you can't expect to be in a business and not having to change things around all the time.
Yes.
Like if
things evolve.
Yeah, because and I know like it's a little bit different when you work in a big corporation because change there is so much slower. But when you have your own company, or if you've worked for a startup, you realize how quickly things move and how quickly you can pivot and learn new things and wear different hats. And so that's what I would say, like for anyone that's pursuing that or thinking about starting their own business, they really have to like realize two things. You have to be super, what's the word? You have to be open to failure. That's one. And like not beating yourself up too much unless you did something really bad. But I can't imagine that anyone would do anything that would be detrimental. But also like understanding that you have to constantly pivot and change and wear different hats.
Right.
And constantly be learning new things.
All right. Yeah. So when you were in corporate, at what point did you decide that you needed to take the leap, take the chance, and then jump into entrepreneurship? Like, did any one thing take place, or was it just a period of transitions and evolution?
It happened kind of over the course of the last 3 years of my life at the company.
Okay.
My software companies in general, they tend to go through a lot of reorgs. And in the 9 years I worked in the company, I had 9 different managers. And that was really hard. That was really hard to adjust to. And I think I just got overwhelmed with the idea of having to kind of readjust myself to a new management style every time. I had a reorg and like my department was changing and they eliminated my position and they gave me the chance to find something internally. And I decided I didn't want to anymore. I said, you know what? I've done this for 9 years. I want to change. I want to do something different. It's a risk, I know. And my husband and I had a conversation about it. And he was like, you know, I think you should pursue it if this would make you happy. And it sounds like that's what you want to do. So I decided to take the risk and took the leap.
So I'm assuming that, so during that period, especially like you said, the last 3 years when things were not ideal for you in corporate, were you making jewelry at that point? Did you already kind of assume that designer role? Okay.
Yeah, so I mean, I was doing it on the side. I was doing the jewelry making, and there was no conflict of interest because one was software and one was jewelry. They were very different industries.
Right.
But my attention was getting further and further away from my work and more into like wanting to build this business. And I think the thing that catapulted me to like leave my job was that we had an opportunity to open up a store. It was like a pop-up term, 6 months to test out like a physical brick and mortar. And that's when things kind of pushed me into the direction of starting my business, because I was like, here's a chance for me to get in front of the customer in a physical space. And so I had to learn visual merchandising. I had to learn how to set up a store, how to like figure out like how to process payments, how to hire people into a retail role. It was a lot of stuff. And but what's funny is I had retail experience when I was like when I was younger. My very, very first job was actually at Macy's. I was 15 years old. I got hired. I turned 16 that summer and they hired me in as the youngest sales associate at Macy's. So I had pretty experience.
Wait, at 15?
At 16.
Oh, at 16. I was going to say, because I know 16 was like the magic age, right?
Yeah, 16 years old. Yeah, no, I was 15 when I interviewed with them, but I turned 16 and then they hired me in.
Okay.
I was the youngest hire they had. And
oh, I'm sure.
yeah, so at 16, I got hired into Macy's. I was very excited. I worked there for like 3 years until I turned 18, almost 19. And then I transitioned out of that. And so I went to college.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Sophie. So when we spoke, before this interview.
Yeah.
I'm a little disappointed that you didn't disclose a few things, right? So I did a little digging around,
Okay.
and but I'm going to give you your flowers, right? So
Okay, give
what
me
I
my
learned,
flowers.
huh?
Go ahead, give me my
Give
flowers.
you your flowers, that's right. So of course you were recently on QVC. When I
Yes.
had seen that on social media, I'm like, oh my God, like that is amazing. And actually watched the segment, unbelievable. But I have to let people know that in addition to that, and that's major in itself, right, to actually land a spot on QVC because those spots are coveted. So in
Yeah.
2014, the Fashion Group International in DC awarded you with the Rising Star Jewelry Award.
Yes.
You were also named the best local jewelry designer in the July-August issue of DC Magazine's Best of the City. And your first collection launched at Henri Bendel in New York. I'm like, what? That is so major.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I'm like, I have to say something. And at the flagship store on Fifth Avenue, that is unbelievable.
Yes.
And I'm not going to assume that everybody here knows about Henri Bendel, but Henri Bendel, definitely a luxury retailer forever.
Back
It's
in
very
the day.
iconic, right, to New York. But what I didn't know was that they were the first retailer to offer to actually stage their own fashion show, to have their own fragrance, and to offer in-store makeovers. I just remember when I graduated from college and I was making money. I'm like, I could actually go into Henri Bendel now and afford to buy things.
Yeah.
It was just an experience when you walked in there. So I was looking through all of this and I'm like, I cannot believe you've got to toot your own horn. I'm like, I cannot believe that that was not disclosed. So,
Well, I guess we didn't get to that part because you were asking about my origins, and I
right,
guess
right,
you were like how I got started.
right.
But yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that was also around the time that I still had my business, like when I was working in corporate.
Mm-hmm.
I went down and stood in line with all these emerging brands that were pitching to Bendel's because it was like you had 5 minutes to pitch to the buyer, showcase your line.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember Ariana was her name, the buyer at the time. She handed me her card and said, "Get in touch with me. I want to do a trunk show with you." And our very
Wow.
first show went really well. Unfortunately, right around the time that I started the trunk show, they were going through some internal changes. So after my second trunk show with Bendel's, they basically got rid of the emerging designer department.
Hmm.
They just started focusing on their own private label of Henri Bendel's.
Mm-hmm.
So it was, and that's why I say, like, you have to remember there are going to be ups and downs in business, and you have to, like, some things are not going to be in your control.
Right.
Can't beat yourself up for it. But that experience taught me something. I mean, one of the best things that I could say that I learned in the process was that I'm a really good salesperson.
Mm-hmm.
And not in a like, hey, I'm going to sell you on this, but like, I really want to take the time to understand what the customer's looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to connect with them because, and that was like really a great experience when I did QVC, but I don't think I could have done QVC if I had just started my business.
Mm-hmm.
It took me 7 years of running my own store, spending time day in and day out with my customers to understand how to connect with them, and then how to use that experience to connect with a customer on TV. I mean, QVC just launched like less than 3 months ago. So that's obviously why it's like a fresh, exciting venture for me. But I'm still learning the process.
You say QVC launched 3 months ago? What do you mean?
I just launched with QVC 3
Oh,
months ago.
yes. Right.
Oh, no, not QVC itself.
I mean, right,
QVC around like the 80s or the
right,
70s.
no, I know that they've been around, but I was thinking maybe another segment of QVC was different.
No.
Okay.
So they launched me. They launched
Yes.
me at the
Yes.
end of June. So I got to be in front of the camera and like talk to the customers. And yeah, I mean, it was exciting. My mom was there, which was really
Oh,
sweet.
I know she was so proud. Did she cry?
I think I cried after I left, like
Mhm.
after the segment was done. It was like a lot of emotions.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the thing, like, there's no like set way of running your business. And like the opportunities that come to you or the ones that you take, they'll in any increment that you take a risk or you take like a opportunity, you're going to learn something new. You're going to learn
Right.
something valuable for your personal growth and your business to grow, you know?
Right.
And for me, like those 7 years of having the brick and mortar, I learned so much in that process, but I also understood what I didn't want in my life. And then I'm sure we will discuss this topic, but like that work-life balance of understanding, like, you know, family time is sacred and you don't want to compromise your sacred time with family for work.
Right. Well, let's jump into that now. So you leave corporate and you have an opportunity to do pop-up and then you commit to a brick and mortar.
Yes.
So this whole podcast is about evolution, right? And going through different phases of life. So you had your corporate life, you move into entrepreneurship full-time, you commit to a brick and mortar, which is major because that, you know,
that's a lot of work. Yeah.
It's a lot of work and it's a major commitment. What made you decide to, well, you tell us, what was the shift after that? Because you said you had the brick and mortar. What did you decide to do and why?
So that's all good questions. So I will say this, when I had my brick and mortar at one point, I would say probably 2 or 3 years into having my first brick and mortar, we tested a second one. So at one point I had 2 brick and mortars.
Oh, wow.
In a very high-end mall called Tyson's Galleria.
Oh, yes.
And then when I was doing both, I realized I was just running myself into the ground. So I decided to take a step back and evolve back into one store. And when I did go back to one store, it was really great because then I just kind of consolidated everything that I had from team to product and everything. And I decided to give it 100% and not spread myself thin. So that's one thing I will say for anyone that's looking to start a business or evolve their business. Make sure that you're concentrating to be the best that you can in one sales channel first, instead of trying to spread yourself thin into multiple sales channels, whether it's physical sales channels or it's like, you know. So when I did the consolidation, right about a year after I decided to sign off on that physical location, COVID hit. So then I was like, okay, this is not good, because obviously as many businesses actually went out entirely during COVID, but we survived.
Yeah.
But when we survived, it was right around the time that I had my daughter. So right before COVID hit us, I had my daughter. She was about 1 month old and I decided to go back to work, which is crazy. But I had no choice. I was like, I have to push, because I don't think if I had pushed during that November, December months in my business, I don't know if we would have survived, because starting in February, March, COVID hit us. And then we were shut down for about 4 or 5 months straight.
Right.
And so, you know.
But did that actually kind of force you to take maternity leave?
It did. You know
like
what?
A blessing in disguise.
It was a blessing in disguise, but it was an additional added stress, because one thing that some people might not know this, but like when you're in a commercial lease, it was very different from having a commercial lease versus having like a residential lease. Residential leases had like freezes, like the landlords allowed their tenants not to pay into the lease. They were given, I think, a tax credit or some sort of, the government was basically helping the landlords that were giving breaks to residential leases. Commercial leases, there was no such thing.
Right.
They expected us to continue paying them during that shutdown, and we did, which was like a little bit of an unfair ask, because it's like, hey, our store is closed. We can't operate, and you're expecting us to pay you all this money.
Right.
So, you know, I adjusted during that COVID period, but then I realized I was pretty much being torn apart between my family and my store. And, you know, to me, it was kind of like this inflection point. And I was like, do I want to compromise that very sacred time with my family for the sake of the business. And I realized, you know what? I don't. So even though we were probably going to be, that would have been our best year to date in revenue for that year in 2022. In August of that year, I decided to close the store and just take a break.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in that process, I kind of wanted to focus on figuring out how to drive my business on to basically pivot from being a brick and mortar to e-com store. And that's what I'm learning. This is where I am now. And right around that time is when QVC also happened, where they approached me and they asked if I would be interested to work with them. And I started exploring that partnership right around that time also, like in 2020, like going from 2022 to 2023. I landed my first trunk show with Bloomingdale's, which is also another major partner.
Wow.
But I will say this, it's like these partnerships are important, but I have to keep in mind, I have to make sure that my business survives regardless of those partnerships, because I learned from the Bendel days, just because they take you in for a trunk show doesn't mean you're guaranteed success.
Right.
Just because I have a Bloomingdale's trunk show doesn't mean I'm guaranteed success. You have to course and chart your success and not depend on these external entities, because in some ways you have no control when they decide to keep you and when they don't.
Right. And it's
So that's
not,
why I want to continue to build my D2C, like my direct to consumer business, because that I have entire control over.
right.
Other things I don't.
Right. But I love how you say that. So you can be excited about your wins along the way and having those connections with major retailers, but you just have to keep going, because you just don't know, and you want to only be able to rely upon yourself. So
Exactly.
So that's definitely some great advice. So what I also hear in here is trying to find that balance, right? So I think many of us get hit with that. Many of us think we can do everything until the babies come, and it's like an immediate switch. Even when you're pregnant, at least I'll speak for myself. When I was pregnant, I still felt, at least with number one, I felt like, oh, it does, I could still do all of these things. My career is moving, nothing's going to change. And once that baby comes, everything literally changes. Your desire to always be there for them, how you approach your career or business, because then you start to think about it in terms of, it's not just for you, it's also for them. Does that cross your mind as you build your business?
Oh,
that
100%.
Now is for your daughter? And is it about leaving a legacy? Is it about teaching her certain things along the way? Like, what are your thoughts surrounding this?
It's such a good question. I'm actually grappling with that question today because I have all this knowledge. I've built this business, and you're right. Like, you as a business owner have to decide whether you want to build the business to be sold to someone to be acquired, or do you want it to become a legacy and make it a family business where it's passed on from one person to the next.
Yes.
To be completely honest, I'm not sure, because I don't know if my daughter wants to continue the jewelry business. I kind of want to set myself up where the possibility of both options are available. So like if she were to come of age where she's, able to work and support and help, if she chooses, she's like, Mom, I want to help you continue growing this business, then that's great. But if she chooses, you know what, I want to do something entirely different. And the thing is, to be honest, I'm already seeing little clues along the way. Like, she loves jewelry, but she has a very science and math, like science mind. She wants to be an astronaut.
Okay.
And she's constantly building little things. And like my husband, he's like, she has a lot of him in her. So I can't expect her to end up being, creative if that's not her like strength, if that's not what she loves. So yeah. And I mean, like time will tell, right? I'm going to continue building what I can in the timeline that I have, but I definitely want to think about the importance of, like you said, how do I want to continue, and considering like I have now this responsibility, and I want to be a responsible parent and a responsible role model to my daughter to make sure that she sees the reality of what it is like to be a woman in today's day and age.
Right.
One good thing about having your business is it does give you that flexibility. So like, for instance, if you needed to like pick them up early from school, or you have appointments or something happens, you can basically take a pause, right? And just say, hey, I need to step away from my business for a couple of hours, and no one's going to get mad at you.
Right.
Yourself, maybe.
Yeah.
But that's it, you know? And I think that the challenge is going to be like, you know, once they get a little bit older, you know, whether they will, whether like, and you know this because you have older kids now. Like my daughter's only about to turn 5. She's about to start kindergarten next year. So I don't know what that's going to look like. But adjusting,
just brace yourself.
I know. I heard there's a lot of emails that come in daily.
Oh,
about
yes.
school.
Having
So
to volunteer at school and all the school events to attend. But kind of the direction you were going, that's actually a privilege, right? So you're a founder,
yeah.
so you can carve out this. And I'm not saying it's always easy to do because you'll have your
No.
business commitments, but the fact that you'll be able to be very active in her life the way you want to be, because
Yes.
you kind of are in control professionally, you know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Precisely. You said it so beautifully. I don't even have.
But you know what's interesting though is even though I was happy to have had that, now that my daughter's in college, I sit back and sometimes I ask her questions. She's like, I don't even know what you do. And then I wonder sometimes, like, did I make the right decision? Clearly, I cannot course correct, but I think it would have been also important for me to show her what I did, tell her the challenges along the way, show her what I was enduring so that she could be better prepared, or at least remember some of these key moments when she gets older, because I shielded her from all of that. And so now she doesn't know. It'll just be relying upon the stories that I decide to share. And that's not the same as them remembering what you've experienced. Because I remember my mother in corporate and just always being stressed and running from point A to point B. I can't go to this school event because I have to work. I can't. So all those, but those things are important because those are the things that shaped my decisions and how I raised my daughter.
Exactly.
So we'll see what she says later, but you know, I guess we can all look.
Like it's also clear. It's one thing to yeah, like you said, to be honest, both decisions, whether you're working for someone else or whether you're working for yourself, both are equally hard. It's just that one gives you a little bit more flexibility than the other, but the financial burden that you take on as a business owner when you decide to take the leap and, you know, start your own business, it's at another level.
Yes.
And the amount of different hats you have to wear and the amount of like mental agility that you need to be able to run the business is on a different level. Like I know a lot of people that work for other people or like work in a corporate environment, and for them they only have to worry about one small section of the business, and that is like the role that they're assigned to. As a business owner, I sometimes feel like I'm worrying about so many things, so many like aspects of my business. And if I only, and that's the thing, like eventually I hope that I get to the position where I can hire someone to do some of this for me. But the workload that you take on as a business owner when you're a founder is on another level. So
that's true. That is true.
Yeah.
So given this focus on familial life, so your husband encouraged you early on to just go for it.
Yes.
So I take it that was supportive then and continues to be supportive, because once you introduce a baby into the mix, everybody changes, right?
Right.
So how has his involvement in your company, if at all, been? And how do you kind of navigate the parenthood space together? And also have him still support you as an entrepreneur?
So, I mean, I think with him, the one good thing is that like, so in his job, he's not able to take his work home versus I can.
Okay.
So that's one thing. And I think he knows that no matter what, I have to be the flexible one in my schedule. there's no chance for him to be because of the type of work that he does.
Mhm.
His job requires him to be on site to be able to complete his tasks. So he would never be able to get out early to go pick up my daughter. I would have to be the one to do it.
Mhm.
But I think like in some ways, because I have a business where I could make my sales on a weekend, or I can do them at a trade show or a trunk show, he understands that, you know what, if I need to do those things, he can watch my daughter and like spend time with her. And that's great because then like we're building our life around each other's schedules and the constructive or the limitations that we both have, right?
Mhm.
I mean, he's been very supportive. He was very excited for the QVC thing.
Oh, I'm
Um,
sure.
yeah, it was, I think it was because he knew like how major it was for
Mhm.
us. But he's also a realist like I am. And we had an honest conversation that like, you know, um, no matter what happens, we have to like be realistic about how business can grow. Like it's not an overnight success like most people think it is.
Mhm.
I mentally prepared him for that.
13 years to be an overnight success, right?
13 years to be an overnight success. The good thing is, at the end of the day, if let's say, you know, I decided I wanted to sell off the business and, you know, do something entirely different, I have a lot of experience. But at the same time, I don't want to entertain that idea until I kind of feel like I'm in that place mentally to you know, and the other thing that's a challenge for me is that this business is my name. Like it's my name.
Yes.
So like there you have to kind of be able to separate out the name from the person a little bit.
Mhm. Mhm.
But I mean, I feel excited. I think that I've accomplished a lot of amazing things that I never thought I would.
Mhm.
But I also want to be a realist in how life is and how businesses are. And like, even though it was like 13 years of business, I really truly think I really understood what it was like to run my business in 2014 when I opened up the brick and mortar. Because up until that point, I had my 9 to 5 job basically supporting what I would consider my passion project.
Mhm.
It was when I
heard
had
a lot of
like,
people say that they, you have your 9 to 5 and it kind of, you transition into entrepreneurship because you start off with a side hustle and you how
yeah,
you get your funding together so that it could support the side
exactly.
hustle, which then eventually becomes your main business. Yeah.
And the highs and lows, like feeling those highs
Mhm.
and lows truly only happens when you give up the 9 to 5. Then
Right.
you like what it's like when you're, you know, basically barely getting by. And then, you know, the highs of like, oh my God, we're having an amazing month, you know?
Mhm.
And, you know, obviously eventually you want to have a more sustainable bit, like it has to be more consistent. And that's what we're working on, is trying to get consistent sales.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay. So you talked about having the brick and mortar and then having to kind of change things around once COVID took place, right? Once the pandemic hit, becoming more
Yes.
of an e-commerce business. But now we
Yes.
can see that you are in a showroom of some sort. So what took place from being online to where you are, or maybe you still had this space while you were online? I don't know. So if you can
Yeah, so I'll tell
share
you the
with us
transition. So
the
in
journey.
2022, August of 2022, I gave up the brick and mortar. It was like a high trafficked area, really great area. But here was the challenge. We would make a lot of money, but we would spend a lot too.
Mhm.
So at the end of the day, when I think I mentioned earlier, profitability is one of the most important things, if not the most important thing to focus on, like kind of like your North Star. I realized we were making sales, but we were basically breaking even.
Okay.
So it was turning, and it made me question. I'm like, I'm not making money on this brick and mortar. It's actually, I'm just staying even. And I need to find a way to actually become a profitable business. And when I looked at the cost of the physical, what is it called? The commercial lease itself, the amount of people that I had hired into to like help run the store, to keep the hours that we were expected to keep, because in a mall-like environment, it's an open mall.
Yeah.
You have to be open from 11 to 8.
Yes.
And those are long hours. That's a
They
9
are.
and you don't get weekends. Like if you're working a 9 to 5, you have Monday through Friday, and then you have your 2 days of rest.
Right.
in a brick and mortar with a large, like with a set schedule of 11 to 8, 7 days a week almost, except maybe Sunday it's a shorter day. That's a lot of hours.
Especially if you're a solopreneur, because then that means you have to be there
Exactly.
the entire time that you just referenced.
I mean,
That's
I had employees, but one was like a full-time / part-time, and the other one was a part-time employee. But you get the situation where they call out sick or something happens, and then you have to like rearrange your schedule, and then you have to run back to the store and do things and, you know, manage it. So end of 2022, I decided to close. I just had this really strong feeling inside that I was like, this is the right thing to do. And when I did, I kind of spent the rest of that year recalibrating, because my daughter, she was going through some things, and we needed to like, I needed to have my calendar cleared basically. And so we needed to place her into like a more steady preschool that gave her the support that she needed.
Okay.
Once she got placed, I got this opportunity to open up a studio space. And this was like a small little 300 to 400 square foot space where it could be by appointment. And that's what I love about it, is I choose the hours. It's not a high trafficked area where people can just show up whenever and like you have to stay open all the time.
So it's by appointment only.
It's by appointment only. But we do have open studio hours. We have one coming up tomorrow. And I realized, like, you know what? This is a little bit more, this is closer to what I wanted my life to look like, is have this control where I'm not responsible for this overhead and this huge rent that I have to pay every month out to my landlord, who's being inflexible. You know, the cost of filling out an entire store constantly. And also being able to have these partnerships like QVC and Bloomingdale's. I would have never been able to do those things if I had my brick and mortar. So it's almost like when they say God opens up a door once one is closed, or once a door closes, another one opens up. Well, that's what happened. You know, I closed my brick and mortar, and then I opened up myself to these partnerships. And I'm learning how to navigate that space, because it's basically you're taking your entire business from direct to consumer brick and mortar to direct to consumer e-com. It's a whole different new learning curve.
Right. And what was the last thing you said?
And wholesale.
Yes. So
and I had never really done that ultimately until now.
So now with your showroom or your studio, do you pretty much have wholesalers come to visit, or do you also have consumers come? Or do
Customers,
you keep
mainly.
Say that again? Customers.
Mostly
Okay.
customers.
Okay.
It's my existing customers who miss me from my brick and mortar that want to spend time and come in and, like, you know, shop around and catch up. And, you know, I do get appointments with brick and mortars. I have one that came in that's a beautiful bridal boutique, and I'm looking to launch a capsule bridal collection soon.
Oh, nice. Okay.
I'm excited.
What time period are you targeting?
So the trunk show will happen in November, but the bride that orders the pieces will not receive them until spring of next year. So it's basically planning 5 to 6 months out from their wedding, which is usually like the timeline. So this is an entirely new white space that we've never, you know, like an area that we've never explored before. And I'm excited because that means, you know, if this becomes successful, that means that I have another collection, so to speak, and a different kind of customer to work with.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when I was asking about the support of your husband, that's one thing, but then the support from others, right? So it's one thing to be creative and have a sense of where you want to kind of express your creativity, how you want to do it, where you want to do it, to whom you want to do it with.
Yeah.
So then in terms of the branching out beyond what you know, so as you're talking about the bridal collection, are you part of an incubator of some sort, or are you part of a business group or anything? Even if you don't state the name, it's fine. But do you find that it's important to also partner with others who are in a similar space so that you can
So here's my advice to anyone that's looking to start their business. Definitely get or join a group, a network of business owners or like-minded, women or men, whatever the industry is. There's so many resources out there. It's obviously hard to know which one is like the best fit, but for me, there were two that were really critical. The Accessories Council, which is based in New York, they're a nonprofit, but the way that they operate is like it's membership based. You become a member of their, I guess, network, and then they have events. They have live events. They have virtual events, and it's just great because I remember. But here's the other thing: like, make sure you budget. If you're starting your business, budget some of that as part of like your either marketing dollars or like educational dollars towards these incubators or these like groups, because there is a cost to it to be a member. And so you have to keep that in mind. So Accessories Council, this is my second year with them. They're actually the reason why QVC found out about me, because we did a Mother's Day gift guide. They featured me in their publication. It was an ad that was placed in their magazine. It's a trade magazine. And then QVC saw it. They really liked the brand. And so they reached out. So that's how that started. So that's why I'm saying, like, putting yourself out into the right organization, right group is really critical. And then recently I joined the Female Founders Collective, which is spearheaded by Rebecca Minkoff. And there was Ali, I can't remember her last name. I think Ali Wyatt. Yeah. So she's a VC, she like, invests in female brands. And then obviously Rebecca Minkoff, many people probably know about her, but if they don't, she's one of the most well-known accessory brands in the handbag. Like, she's known for her handbags, basically. And so that incubator, I just joined about 2 months ago, or not even a month ago. And I found them invaluable too. Like, they have a really great network of women, and they focus on females. Like, they're called the Female Founder Collective for a reason, because it's specifically for females. I'm still learning and navigating their educational platform, but they do have a lot of resources. And no matter what happens, like, if there's an answer that you need, maybe you like reach out to these networks and say, hey, I have this problem I'm trying to figure out. Do you know anyone who's been through this or knows anyone that could help me with this? I'll give you those resources. Some of them are free, some of them are paid, but ultimately you find the answers in one shape or form. And I think it's really important so I think that if I could, turn back time and start when I was starting my business, the first thing I would have done is joined one of these networks. There's another one that's called SCORE. It's a nonprofit. I don't think that one you pay for, but they have coaches, and that it can place you and connect you with a mentor there too.
Is that similar to the SBA, where it's people who have retired from corporate and
sort of, but SBA
I know of SCORE, but I just don't remember.
So SBA specifically, what I know about SBA is that they are usually good about like giving you tools on how to start a business, how to like set yourself up, and then they obviously have their loan programs and things like that. But SCORE, I think, has mentorship. I don't know if SBA has mentorship, but they have mentors. They have people that come in like as experts, and they can connect you, and they say, hey, like, this person has been in the retail business, like industry for X number of years, you should connect with them, and they can like coach you through some things. So they're like free coaches ultimately.
Right. Okay.
So those are the three I would say, like SCORE for sure for all across all industries. They have virtual events constantly. And here's the thing, like, you have to decide, like, before you even start looking through these programs or these like organizations, what are the things you want to tackle, right? And if let's say you're in the software, if you're, coming up with like a new app, then you probably want to network with people that are in like the IT industry. Like the Accessories Council and like the Female Founders Collective may not be the right fit, but SCORE might be, because they
Right.
have they're across many industries. But
Right.
over time, you want to obviously hone into like a network that's very specific to your niche.
Yes. And networking is very,
And
very key, not just for corporate, but also
across the
entrepreneurially.
board,
Yes, across
absolutely.
the board.
Because
Definitely.
you never know what could happen in that moment when
Right.
you're at these, like events. You could get connected to someone that could help you like open up a door for an entirely different, opportunity that you would have never even thought of,
Right. You just can't stay isolated. That's the bottom line. You
That
can't
was
get
the
out
one
there.
thing I will say with the brick and mortar, that's how I felt. I felt
Oh,
very
really?
isolated because when you own the brick and mortar, you're there daily.
That's true. You have limited time to kind of get out and meet
When
people.
would you go and network? All these
Right.
networking happen after like between 5 and 8,
Right.
and you're in the store between 5
I
and
didn't
8.
think of it that way. Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, in some ways, I think unless you decide that in the brick and mortar, if you opened one up, you would not physically be there for a certain periods of time, and that's okay. But when you first start out, you probably don't have the funds to hire someone. You have to be
Right.
there to kind of build up the sales in
Yeah.
order to be able to eventually hire someone in to help you.
Exactly. Definitely, definitely. So what's next for Sophie Blake, New York?
Well, I think I kind of clued into one area, which is like I'm looking to kind of test out this bridal concept to see if the modern bride would like to wear the Sophie Blake brand. And I think that there's definitely an opportunity there. And I'm excited because I'm going to beta test it with a very beautiful boutique locally.
Okay.
And if it does well, if the brides respond well to it, then I may just kind of expand that out to other retailers. What else I'm trying to think? I definitely want to grow our e-com for sure. Like I think that that's an area where this was like a 2023 project 2023 into 2024 project. And I taught myself how to run ads in order to be able to understand like how like Facebook marketing works and like all that.
Right.
And more travel, I guess. Like I'm excited because I have this Argentina trip coming up, and who knows, maybe that inspiration will help me build out a brand new collection. So I guess like my top 3 things are to close out Q4 of this year successfully.
Right.
And you know, God willing, everything works out, we will have our highest sales year of history.
Wow. That's
Yeah, that would be
excellent.
great. Yeah, so that and then this, potential collaboration with Bridal, and then hopefully a new collection on the horizon to excite my customers.
Nice. Now, do you travel every year?
I try to. This last year we didn't, and I have that's why I think of like my creative, flow has been a little bit lower than usual. Because I'm thinking about it, when we went to Ecuador and Costa Rica, we did that within a year and a half. And that's like when I came up with my next collection. And prior to that, I was in my previous collection to that was, I'm trying to think, what collection did I launch that year? Right. Oh, Terraform. Terraform was actually one of my strongest collections, actually. And that was during COVID, but we did a lot of like local travel. We went through like Shenandoah Park and like I turned to nature for inspiration. But that was also when my mind was much more calm, right? Like because everything slowed down for me.
Right.
I didn't have to be in
The
the
forced slow
order.
down.
And so that's why I'm saying like being a creative, it's so important to have that like quiet time to let your mind dull and to like kind of process everything, because if you don't have that time, it's really hard to get creative.
That's true. I mean, I feel the same, like even for my marketing business, even with podcasting, it's the same thing. Well, what do I want to talk about? Like all these things, if you're using any creative juices, you do need that downtime to kind of
Yeah, like you need to step back.
generate the ideas.
And I did. I remember we talked about it because you
Yeah.
come from a marketing background, and to be a good marketer, you have to kind of figure out obviously like the strategy, but the strategy, how to execute the strategy, you need the creative part to be able to do it and to do it effectively, to connect with the customer, give them a story that helps them pull them into the
Right.
storyline and get them excited.
Yeah, and it takes a moment sometimes. You know, it's like being a writer, right? Just like your writer's block, it happens, you know?
It does, yeah.
So
But
actually, because, you know, I have things all over, I want you to get a little closer into the camera so people can see how adorned your left ear, is that your left ear? Yes, because I love, love, love the ear cuffs, the large and small, and I have the gold one here, and it was here, but my hair is also covering it. These are so cool, and when I wear them, people are like, "Oh my gosh!" So
really? Oh my
that's
gosh.
why I'm like so disappointed. I'm like, oh, if I don't know if you saw it fall out while I was here because I didn't put it on well.
Yeah, because
Yes.
here's the thing, you have to make sure when you wear them, you hook it inside the ear, like just to
Yes, and it secures it.
It secures it so it doesn't come
Yes.
off. I'm like doing this and nothing
Yes.
happens.
So I didn't do that
And this is a gunmetal. This is like the fall color.
I like that because it's not like a shiny chrome, but it's just a little, I love that. I'm gonna have to get that.
Yeah, it's actually, I was working on getting it up on the website today.
Yes.
They just did the gunmetal hoops. I didn't get a chance to pull them out, but it's
So
the
when do
same.
you think that will be available online? The
This?
gunmetal, the cuff, yes.
By tonight.
Okay, good.
Yeah. I'm gonna make an email blast out. Like I was working on it before I got to the studio, and then I was like, oh, I gotta get ready. I gotta get to the studio. But yeah.
No, I love that. It's just so cool because the ear cuffs, you usually see them thinner, smaller. That's
Yeah,
really
these are like very prominent, and then they come in different colors too. So we have like the deep red now, the blue, which is really beautiful too. It's like a lapis color.
And the pearl, do you still have the pearl up?
The pearl, oh, the pearl looks pretty. We're trying to make it into a black pearl. He's supposed to send me a picture of what that's gonna look like. So
nice. Okay.
My enamel guy.
Right. Oh, cool. Well, I love your jewelry. I like big chunky jewelry, but there was something about the rings that I purchased that were just thin and dainty and just do you have them on now?
I have the puzzle. So this is the puzzle. This one's the one. These two are cutesy.
Right.
And I love them because they complement each other, even though the weight of this one or the size of this one is so much more significant.
Right.
But they with each other, you know, and I wear these daily.
Yes. Just beautiful. I'm in a weird space right now where everything, things that fit yesterday don't necessarily fit the same today. Let's just put it
jewelry, you'll never have that problem. It always fits. That's what I love about jewelry. It doesn't matter. Oh, the fingers.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I guess. Yeah. I love that.
Yeah. So, but so I remember going to a restaurant recently with a friend, and I had a very thin bracelet that had a chain to the ring.
Yes.
And so then I wore the 2 rings that I purchased from you, and they were like, oh my God, because I usually do big and chunky, but I was in a dainty type of mood. It was just so beautiful. So I encourage everyone to go and take a look at your website. And so I'll definitely, of course, link everything so that they can reach out to you. But
and also make sure that they know about this very special promotion we're going to do with you.
Yes.
So, you know, for all your audience, whoever's watching the podcast, they'll get 20% off when they shop online, and we can drop them the code. It's BRI20.
Yeah.
Super easy to remember, BRI20.
Right. Very easy to remember.
Yeah, I made sure to make it simple.
Right. Now that is that's wonderful, and everyone, I really encourage you to take a look because the pieces are just so beautiful. But I'm not done yet. I still have.
Oh, you're not? Okay. Okay, that's fine. We can continue talking. I don't mind at all.
Yeah, just a couple of questions.
And I feel like I've just started warming up because I think before I was like on the camera, like kind of figuring out my thoughts, but now I kind of feel like we have a nice flow going.
Right, we just have a flow, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I like to ask this question because I'm always curious to see how people will respond.
Sure.
Is life turning out for you as you expect or as you planned?
That's a good question. That's a hard one to answer. I think in some ways it has, and in some ways it hasn't.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, but here's the thing, like there's certain things that you will not have control over, external factors. So from like a personal side, I remember back in New York, I was dating a guy and I thought he was going to be the one, right? Like I thought this is the guy I'm going to marry. We came from the same hometown and he didn't want to commit. And I felt really frustrated because I was like, but this is my plan. This, we've been together for a long time. And then I decided to go overseas for a year for work. And that was when I was working at that software company. And at the time, him and I were kind of separating because things were just not going our way. And I needed to rebalance and find myself again. And in that process, I ended up meeting my husband. And it was almost like going back to that conversation about when one door closes, another opens. And that's
Right.
even like my husband is incredible. I love him. He is the kindest, sweetest soul. He's been nothing but supportive of me and like my ambitions. And I couldn't choose a better partner for life. Like he's gold. And
Beautiful.
I say that to say that it's important to understand that like you may have a plan in your head, but God has something better for you or the universe, whatever. I don't want to use God loosely because some people are not as spiritual as others,
That's
but
okay. It's
but
what you
yeah,
think.
but like from a universal sense, like the universe, God, whatever you believe in, you may have a plan, but he has a better plan. So trust in the process, trust in that universe loves you and wants to provide and wants to help you. And the same thing happened when I was having a hard time, and like this is a lot of more personal stuff, but I couldn't get pregnant and we were going through a lot. And I decided to shift to IVF because that was like this, I turned to science basically to have my daughter. But my daughter is the most wonderful child. And I wanted to be a mother and God gave me that opportunity. And so I feel blessed.
Right.
And it's the same thing with my business. I have to remind myself, even in the low moments, that if something is not working out, it wasn't meant for me, and something better is meant for me.
Right.
So like as long as you remind yourself of that and you keep repeating that mantra that, I'm loved, I'm worthy, and that whatever happens, it's for the better, for my betterment.
Right.
So
I have learned over time that it does play into faith, right? Because
you have to have faith.
yes,
That
you
it
have
work
to.
itself out. Yeah.
And you have to believe that if you're in a bad moment, one is going to end. But if something is not working out for you, it's not meant for you. As you said,
Exactly.
something better is. But when you're in the moment,
Hard to get yourself out of that. And
yes.
and that's the other thing, like we're so much in our heads. And that's why like I'm actually going through some things where I'm trying to pull myself out of my head and just look at my life from like a top view and understand what I need to appreciate, what matters, right? Because whenever you do that, you realize things, whatever you're going through in that moment, isn't as bad as you think.
Right.
It could all be resolved,
Right.
it's not the end of the world. And I don't think that God would have put me on this path if he didn't think that I would be successful or that he didn't want me to learn something from it,
Right. Right.
And that's kind of how I see it. And so having a business, obviously it's one of the hardest things I've ever done. But it's also one of the most rewarding because I can say, I built this
Yes.
from nothing, from scratch.
Right.
A whole lot of people can say that. But even if you didn't, and if it's something that you want to pursue down the road, yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is to have faith and and may have a plan, you may have like a schedule in mind. And if it doesn't work out that way and you get frustrated, it's okay. It's okay to be frustrated, but to also understand that like when you see other people's success, you don't know what they've went through to get to that success.
Very true.
So you have to remember like everything happens because it's a teaching moment.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's success or failure, it's a teaching moment.
Right.
And that's how you have to kind of go through it. And life is about change. Life is about the unexpected and how you respond to it.
Mm-hmm.
More times than not, life will throw things at you and then you like figure them out, right?
Right. Right. That is so true. So we've talked a lot about business. What do you do for fun?
That's a good question.
Or do
So
you do things for fun?
I do.
Okay.
Traveling is obviously one of my top things. Like I love traveling.
Uh-huh.
Outside of traveling, I love to my husband and I are divers, so we dive in.
Oh, really?
And yeah, we haven't done it in a while. It's a little bit harder now since I have my daughter because like I don't want to take that risk as often.
Mm-hmm.
Diving can be a little bit dangerous,
Right.
depending on how comfortable you are underwater. But I'm trying to think, what else do I do for fun? I like to hang out with my friends.
Mm-hmm.
I love to cook. Cooking is another way I like mellow out.
Yes.
I don't know. I'm trying to think. What else do I do for fun? I would say snowboarding in the winter time if I get a chance to.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're adventurous.
I am adventurous. Yeah.
Good,
I like
good.
trying new things. Yeah.
Okay. And so with respect to today, everyone talks about self-care, self-care, self-care.
Yeah.
What is the one non-negotiable for you with respect to self-care?
Sleep.
That's a good one though. Yes.
Yeah.
Sleep.
I need sleep. There are people out there that can operate in less than like under 6 hours of sleep or maybe
That's
less.
me.
Yeah, that's incredible. I wish I had that skill set. You know what I mean? Like I wish I had that.
Yeah.
But I really need sleep. I'm one of those people that if I don't get like at least 6.5, 7 hours, ideally my sleep amount is 7.5 to 8. If I could get those 8 hours in between 8 hours, I'm happy and I feel clear-minded. But when my sleep is disrupted and I feel lethargic, I just don't think as clearly.
Understandable. You know, I wish I could change it, but I'm one of those people, 6 hours, I'm like, darn it, now I'm up. I need to
Well, you're like my daughter. My daughter doesn't need a lot of sleep and she's up and she's ready to go. And I'm dying because she's like, Mommy, let's go. And I'm just like, okay, let me get my coffee.
It's like,
my husband got waiting 5 a.m. or he wakes up at 5 in the morning.
Oh my gosh, really?
Yeah. I mean, I'm up by 7. If I'm up by 7:30, that'll be like, that's my happy. But my daughter, she's like my husband. She'll wake up at 6.
My hours are really kind of crazy right now, but I'm usually up really, really late. Like it will not be unusual for me to be up at 3 a.m., 4 a.m. and then go to sleep. And
no, I know. Like, and that's the thing. I can't afford to do that. Like if I go to bed after 10, I'm definitely gonna need that until 8 to sleep in.
yes.
Like I won't be able to like pick and I can do it, but I feel like my body actually physically feels not great when I don't get my sleep.
That is, yeah, I understand though. I get it. Well, Sophie, I thank you so much. So the Living Her Next Phase listeners are here for inspiration and to embrace their own evolution at each phase of their lives. And fulfillment is something that many of us often seek at different phases, but we don't always know how to get there. What advice would you give to the listeners in closing to find fulfillment at each phase?
To find fulfillment in each phase, I would say try to find the small wins in that process.
Mm-hmm.
Those little small wins will help you get through the hardest part.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's so funny that I should say that. Ironically, I didn't even mention all my wins, but I think it was because I was focusing
Sorry,
on,
that's a medication thing.
no, that's okay. So I was gonna say, yeah, like the small wins matter. And just keeping an open mind that, you know, whenever you have like a certain set of goals that you're trying to achieve in that transition period, that you may have to adjust those expectations a little bit over time. You know, so that's, I think that would be the thing that I would say is celebrate the small wins, lean on your community too, actually. That's another really important one. You have a community that you can turn to, lean into them, celebrate those small wins, look for that advice, and then just keep an open mind that if you have to like adjust your goals and expectations, it's okay too. It's not the world's not going to end.
Right.
If things don't go exactly as you planned.
Right. Yes. That's all I'm gonna
Like,
say.
I mean, even, you know, and everything works out, you know, everything, no matter what happens,
Yeah.
it all works out. Like
It
everything
always does.
falls into place. Like, no matter what you do, no matter how crazy of a crisis you're in, like to give you an example, yesterday, I had a very, very hectic day, and my girlfriend had asked me to ship out a necklace to her client. And I was literally running against the clock because I had to drop off my husband's mom to the train station. And then I accidentally took the wrong turn going back out, like to go back to the studio. My daughter was in the back and I got stuck in really bad traffic. And then I was running out of gas and I was just like freaking out. And I was like, all these things were happening at the same time.
Right.
Mom problems right here.
Right.
My kid was sleeping in the back. I finally got to the gas station and then I get the phone call from my friend. She's like, hey, what are you doing Saturday? I was like, oh, I've got nothing really planned after my studio hours. She said, why don't you come with me? We're doing a commercial. I want you to be in it. I was like, okay. And I was like, hey, do you mind if I then bring the necklace with me instead of having to ship it to you? And she goes, yeah, that's perfect. So there you go. That whole stress of like trying to make it to the post office in the last 30 minutes got eliminated. And I wasn't even expecting the call from her. And then it happened.
Yeah.
And that was like one thing that I could just not worry about.
Yes.
It worked itself out. You know, I got
did.
to get to see my friend. I'm going to be, you know, helping her with a commercial shoot, and the necklace will get to her on time.
Right. Doesn't it feel sometimes like God just says, I'm going to disrupt this thing because this other thing
is going to happen down there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's just a very small little, you know, example.
Yeah. Now, you gave the example that you just experienced, but the bigger picture is all that you've described throughout this interview. So yeah. Well, Sophie, can you share with people how they can connect with you?
Yes. So if you wanted to connect with me and you have questions about any of the things that I talked about, I'm an open door, and I have a lot of experience in the fashion industry. So my handle is Sophie Blake NY for Instagram. My LinkedIn is Sophie Blake. If you look me up, I should be there. And then contact@Sophie Blake, and our website, if you're in the market for really awesome jewelry, that is travel inspired wearable art. And I promise you will get your compliments, complimentary free.
Yes.
It's sophieblake.com.
Excellent. And I'll make sure that I include everything in the show notes so people can access the information quickly and easily. And Sophie, this was just a phenomenal interview, and I was so excited that you said yes. And of course, it's been my pleasure to get to know you even more so. And I know my listeners will enjoy the conversation too. So thank you so much. I am very grateful and very appreciative.
I'm glad that I was able to do this, and it's my first podcast, so I'm really excited.
I love that.
And once it's ready, please let me know so that I can share it with my audience too.
Of course.
Yeah.
Great, Sophie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.